Okay, everybody, today we are talking about dialogue and specifically how to use it, how to punctuate it. And this can be kind of confusing for a lot of students. So I'm going to encourage you to grab a notebook and a pen or pencil and get ready to jot some notes down and to practice punctuating some dialogue. So let's dig in. First of all, what is dialogue? Quite simply, dialogue are the words that are spoken within a written work. Often it's a conversation between two characters or two or more characters. It's just the stuff that is said. That's all it is. So if you have a character and he's talking to another character, that is the dialogue of a written piece of work. A short story, a novel, doesn't matter. Some of the rules, and some of these can seem maybe kind of obvious, but you'd be surprised at how many times students forget this. The very first important one is you enclose the spoken words in quotation marks. And I'm going to add this here. It's not listed, but I'm going to add it. You don't have a space between your quotation mark and the word that's right next to it. There is no space. So it's immediately side by side. But the words that are spoken are going to be enclosed in quotation marks, and the punctuation for that spoken sentence goes inside the quotation marks. So if it's a period, if it's a comma, question mark, it doesn't matter. It goes inside the quotation marks. And if you look at that sample sentence, this is a sentence, so the period is within the quotation marks, period, end quotation marks. Very important to remember that. When you are including a dialogue attribution, which is simply just naming the person who's speaking, so whether it's John says or she says or whatever, the spoken sentence will end with a comma inside the quotation marks, and the period will come after that attribution. So for example, learn how to use dialogue, comma, close quotation marks. Mrs. Freeze said, period. The comma goes inside the quotation marks after the spoken sentence, and the period goes after the said. He said, she said, whatever, after the attribution. Okay, so just keep that in mind when you're punctuating dialogue. We got more rules. When the spoken sentence is interrupted with your attribution, you're going to use commas to separate those spoken words. And this is kind of what I mean. So quotation marks. If you learn how to use dialogue, comma, close quotation marks. Mrs. Freeze said, comma, quotation marks. It will serve you well, period, close quotation marks. The spoken sentence is interrupted by the attribution. So you offset it with commas. Notice that the comma within the dialogue goes inside the quotation marks, and the comma after the attribution it's not inside the next set of quotation marks, so pay attention to that. Anytime you have a new person who's speaking, you need to start a new line and indent. So if you have a conversation like the one I just pulled up, I like chocolate, said Mrs. Free. I think caramel is better, said the person who is wrong. You start a new line and you indent it over anytime a new person is speaking, okay? These are just little indications to let you know, okay? All right, so here I have a situation for you. I'll read it aloud, and then I want you to pause it, and I want you to rewrite this particular scene, punctuating the dialogue correctly. When you are finished, hit play, come back, and I'll give you the correct form so you can check your work. So, two friends sat on a park bench discussing the latest result of the singing talent show. I think Tyrese should have been voted off, said Crystal. He was terrible. No way, said Emily. He's the only one with true talent. If you say so, said Crystal. It doesn't matter, said Emily, since Carrie's going to win anyway. Okay. Pause, and then come back when you have finished rewriting this with correct dialogue. Okay. The answer is two friends sat on a park bench discussing the latest result of the singing talent show. I think Tyrese should have been voted off, said Crystal. He was terrible. No way, said Emily. He's the only one with true talent. If you say so, said Crystal. It doesn't matter, said Emily, since Carrie's going to win anyway. And the words got cut off, so I apologize. But that gives you a visual of how this looks. And notice that punctuation is all inside the quotation marks. And every time a new person is speaking, you start a new line and indent over. Okay. The other thing that you need to keep in mind with dialogue, and I see this a lot with student writers, dialogue needs to be interspersed with narrative. The narrative describes the actions that are taking place. Do not use dialogue to describe what's happening. That's really, really important. Dialogue expresses a character's emotions. It expresses what they're thinking. It gives insight to, how they feel, but it is not a place to describe what's happening. You are to describe what's happening with narrative, and that's the written stuff that is not dialogue. You need to assume that the reader isn't seeing what you're seeing, so you have to show them what's happening through narrative. Okay, keep that in mind. You have dialogue, that is the spoken words, and narrative that describes the action that is happening in your story. Let me just kind of show you an example. So this would be bad dialogue. "Look out," said Jared. "Holy cow, did you see that?" asked Brian. "What was that?" The boys ran to a car and drove away. "It's right behind us," yelled Jared. Okay, this is really bad. All right. There is some narrative, but it's very limited. And we have no idea what's going on. Like, is there a zombie attacking them? Is there a raging pit bull attacking them? Is there inflamed tree branch swinging? I mean, nobody knows. You just have two talking heads that are babbling at each other. We have no idea what's going on. Something better would be like this. "Look out," said Jared, just as an enormous tentacle swung at his friend Brian's head. The orange tentacle stretched out from the lake and reached toward the beach. "Holy cow, did you see that?" Brian asked as the tentacle receded back into the water. "What was that?" The boys ran to a car and drove away. Just then a giant squid emerged from the water behind them and pulsated forward. Jared hit the gas. "It's right behind us." So what you see is that you have dialogue, and it's the same dialogue, but now it's interspersed with narrative that describes what's happening in this particular scene. So it's not just talking heads anymore. You have an image. You can see what's happening. So keep that in mind as you're writing your dialogue, that you don't just want talking heads. You need some narrative mixed in with that. Okay. If you have any questions concerning dialogue, you can certainly post it in the comments below, and I will try and answer them as best I can. If you're interested in purchasing these particular slides, I will put the link in the description for this video, and you can check that out on my Teachers Pay Teachers site. I hope you enjoyed this, and yeah, let me know if you have any questions. Take care.